Welcome to We Who Are Dog,
a conversation in history and humanities. I'm Dr. Neil Vaz.
And I'm Trent Tomengo. Okay. The base understanding about the psychology of being Black, at least from my perspective, can be understood through a story that happened to me. I remember when I first started teaching an honors course, and the students of that course, not the students of the course, the students in the honors department were getting information about my class, and they heard good things about me. So they asked if they were having like a bonfire, and they were having each student bring some sort of food from their particular cultures to this bonfire. And this was an honors course that was about, I can't remember exactly what it was about, but it had something to do with all kinds of cultures. And so part of their class was to have this bonfire where everybody bring the food about their specific cultures and then talk about their specific cultures. And they all researched their own histories and all of this. And so they said that they wanted me to be the speaker. When the teacher asked them, or the instructor asked them, who do you want to come and be the keynote speaker at this bonfire? Overwhelmingly, students said Professor Tomengo. Some had taken my class, some had not. But they just heard about me. And so they asked, the professor came to me and asked me if I would do it. And I said, absolutely. I'm never going to turn down students that want me to speak at things. Yeah. And so I went to this bonfire. Of course, it was at night. It had a big fire pit. And as the night, everybody ate. The food was good in different places, right, from different areas of the world. So we're sitting around this bonfire after everyone is eating, and they ask each student to like talk about what they found out about the history of their family, where they come from, and how that, informs who they are today. And so we had an Italian student that says, my family is Italian, and they came from, whatever part of Italy. And I found out that my great-great-grandfather, he sold rugs and did this. And then my mother and father, they went here, and then they moved here, and then I was born and all that. And then the person who was from, whose family was German, they said, I was born here, but I found out that, my family comes from, Germany, and my grandmother was a baker. She owned a bakery, and I'm here, and blah, blah, blah. So you get all of these, students talking about the history of their families and their culture. And then there was one Black student in that honors course, one. Mm-hmm. And when it got to him, he said, I'm from Sanford. My mama was from Sanford. And he sat down. That's the furthest that he could go, was Sanford. Now, he could have gone and talked about what Black people did before, but he could only trace his history back 1 or 2 generations. And as I listened to him, I'm like, wow, no one can understand what this kid is going through in his mind psychologically. I'm here to speak about, I think the topic they asked me to speak on was how do you feel about your culture and your history? Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell people, if you don't want to know, you better not ask me. But they asked me, so I did it. And so when everybody had finished what they were saying, I'm thinking, how can I redeem this brother?
Yeah.
Because it's not that he didn't do his research. And it's not that he didn't have an interesting family history. It's just that, he was black. That's the situation a lot of us have.
But he didn't do his research. Why give him a pass?
I give him a pass because even if I think he went back to like his grandfather, but he could only trace it back to Sanford. Now he probably could have dug deeper and did a little more family history, but that wasn't the sentiment that came out. Mm. He did what he could do. He did talk about what the family did and all that, but it really did not have the kind of legacy that the German and the Italian, even the Puerto Ricans, like, well, I'm Puerto Rican. I'm pure Puerto Rican, and my family's from Puerto Rico, and this is a Puerto Rican dish, and all of that, right? So I decided that what I was going to do was try to put the group in a psychological mindset to understand what it means when you talk about heritage and history of being black. So I said, everybody spoke, and then I stood up. And just for effect, I kind of walked around the fire without saying anything. And of course, people who were requesting me to be there were like, what the hell is he gonna say? Right? So I said, this is all about psychology of being black. So I told them, I said, after I was very, silence, me just walking. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, you hear the crackling of the fire, and you're just walking. And then I stopped, and I said, asking me how I feel about my heritage is like asking the child of a rape victim how they feel about their father. Mm-hmm. If you say, I hate what my father did because what my father did is a crime, do you wish yourself out of existence? Mm. Or if you say, I love the fact that I'm here and I love being alive and I love me, then do you
the rape?
You're right. Do you celebrate the rape that your father did? That's the psychology of being black. Mm. Mitigating that experience. Mitigating that psychological experience. Everything that we create. Yeah. Our community organizations, our very existence, our art, our literature, our music, everything we create is trying to find that balance between loving who we are and at the same time not condoning how you got to be who the fuck you are. Hmm. Now they may have to bleep that one out.
Let me ask you this. Is your identifying with Africa, would that be, I guess, an analogy to identifying with the enabler of the rape?
What do you mean? Say that again?
Because you say you don't identify with Africa as like a label. Is it because you don't identify with the enabler of the rape?
No. I identify myself, part of me, as African in kind. Yeah. Right? I identify with that part of me as Africa in kind. Because there are things about me and about the way I do things that now, as an educated person, I understand are cultural layovers from African traditions. Right? I understand that. Yeah. So I embrace the African in me. I embrace the brownness, the melanin in my skin. I embrace all of that. What I don't embrace is the idea that you label me nationally, or in my national identity as an African American.
I see.
Because again, that's a misnomer.
Yeah.
That is mislabeling me.
Yeah.
I'm not from Africa. I was born here. I'm American. And I'm proud to say that I am American.
Yeah.
That my parents had me here. However, I may not like the way I'm treated or people like me are treated. So if I'm going to make a difference between myself and everyone else, and I must make a difference, then it's because, then it's that I'm going to call myself black. If I'm going to make a difference, the difference is going to be black. I'm Black American.
Yeah.
And I'm proud to say I'm Black American, as I said before, because of all of the things that Black Americans have endured and have overcome and have created so that I can understand myself in this historical continuum the way I understand myself. I give credit to that. I own that. Period.
Nice.
So what you gonna do with that?
I don't know.
That's a good answer. I've thought through these things. I've thought through them over and over again, just to sort of put together, who I am now because of how I grew up. So I always knew. Well, I ain't gonna say always knew, but when I was a kid, the thing that you're asked is, what do you want to do when you grow up?
Yeah.
And I always said, since I can remember, I want to be an artist and a preacher.
Yeah.
Because to me, preachers got a lot of respect in the culture that I grew up in. And what I was saying as a kid is, I want to be respected.
Yeah.
Right? Art, I just knew how to draw. It was a natural talent. When I was in first grade, I drew a pink pig that my mother kept.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened to it. But, people just told me, you draw really well. So I'm like, okay, I want to be an artist.
Yeah.
I want to be an artist and a preacher. I want to be respected, and I want to do what I know how to do well, right? And I remember my mother had this Bible on the coffee table. And this Bible was an illustrated Bible. And when you open the Bible, you can see, all of the biblical scriptures in it, but there were pictures. There were pictures or paintings, to be specific. Paintings of all of the different scenarios that were described in the Bible. Abraham, Moses, and Jesus. All of this was like illustrated. And I remember looking at those paintings, and I'm like, I want to do that. I want to create paintings. I want to be an artist. I remember saying that as a kid.
Yeah.
Right? But you got to remember that those were all European paintings from people like Rembrandt, Caravaggio, Peter Paul Rubens. These were like things that I sort of, inculcated in my mind as what art was. And that's what made me want to be an artist. Because I wanted to be able to create images like that from a religious perspective. I wasn't thinking about black. Oh, these people need to be black. I'm like, no. I was like, when it said Abraham sacrificed Isaac to God, Rembrandt gave me what that looked like.
Yeah.
So it became real to me from the image. And I wanted to be able to create images that would become real to people. Right?
Yeah.
And so that's how I sort of, grew up.
Yeah.
I have no idea what I'm talking about at this point. But For some reason, I felt compelled to tell you that story. So you got to bring me back.
So, I guess because we were talking about, the psychology behind blackness and the psychology behind everything like that. And you talked about your experience with that honors. Was it an honors?
Oh, that was the honors class.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for bringing me back. So, understanding that this kid's presentation was quite different. Don't even ask me what food he brought because I can't remember.
Yeah.
Right? But I felt like I had to redeem him. And as a matter of fact, I did, because at the end of the whole night, the first time I met him, he came up to me, we talked a little bit, and he eventually took one of my honors courses.
Nice.
And I stayed in touch with him for a while,
Nice.
right? So I knew it resonated some kind of way with him,
Yeah.
But again, the idea that, and I'm gonna get real personal here, because myself, I can only go back to, I think, 2 generations, North Carolina. My father was Golden Mingo. That was his name. Golden Mingo.
Yeah.
His father, his name was Boise Mingo, out of North Carolina. I couldn't go further than that.
Yeah.
I mean, I had entertained the idea of paying somebody who I knew was doing genealogical research, and she was going to help me.
Mingo is a common slave name.
Okay, see, and I've learned several origins of Mingo.
Yeah.
But the bottom line was, I could spend time going down this rabbit hole of finding out, where my family came from and all of that. But to me, I was like, okay, for what?
Yeah.
In the end, if I could say, well, I come from this area of Africa and these were their customs, and it's not my customs now.
Yeah.
So I can adopt it and say, this is my identity. I could do that, and no problem with people that do that. But for me, that was not enough.
Yeah.
So
what is enough?
What is enough for me is what I do right now. My name, the name Tomengo, my name specifically, Trent Tomengo. What I do right now establishes my legacy.
Yeah.
Right? I pull from all of the black people in history who have done things that I felt was phenomenal, based on the insurmountable odds that they were given. I draw inspiration from them. And I draw inspiration from them because they are human. And this lets me know that the human spirit can rise above anything. And that's what gives me my fire. They're black and they're human.
For me, it's a little bit different. I would say I've always been driven. I guess that's why I'm a history major. But I've always been driven to know, like, what happened before, And so I'm always digging up, trying to figure out how I got here, how my ancestors got here, and one of the things that inspired me to do that is, your class helped a lot with that, but also reading the autobiography of Malcolm X. Well, one of the things he talked about, a lot of my whole framework of just thinking about things comes from the way Malcolm X kind of worded things. And one of the things he talked about was that black people were cut off from their history, they were cut off from their past.
Who are you? You don't know. Don't tell me Negro, that's nothing. What were you before the white man named you a Negro? And where were you? And what did you have? What was yours? What language did you speak then? What was your name? It couldn't have been Smith or Jones. or Bunch or Powell. That wasn't your name. They don't have those kind of names where you and I came from. No, what was your name? And why don't you now know what your name was then? Where did it go? Where did you lose it? Who took it? And how did he take it? What tongue did you speak? How did the man take your tongue? Where is your history? How did the man wipe out your history? What did the man do to make you as dumb as you are right now?
When I started getting into X, learning those things, I was like, well, dang, I would like to know deeper than just like the superficial.
Right.
And you and I are already different in the sense that my parents come from another country. So right there, that already makes me a little bit more like distinct in terms of like, if we had one of those things at the honors ceremony, I could say, well, Jamaica or Grenada or something like that, as opposed to just saying something that's local, right? And I try to tell my students that do come from local backgrounds, like, you'll be surprised, like your local background has a lot of rich history.
Absolutely.
Just like somebody's somewhere else. If my people would have stayed in the country that they're from, and we had the same kind of situation where they had to talk about their background, they would be a local background, right? So It's not even, it doesn't make one background better than the other or anything like that. But I started digging deep and asking my parents like what they know about their history. So when I was in my late teens, early 20s, and then I learned that my grandfather, he left, right before he died, he left a little paper writing down all his ancestors that he knows about. And then he said that his grandmother didn't speak English. She was, I guess she spoke like a kind of Creole kind of language, and her last name was Cujo. Cujo, for anybody that doesn't know, is an Akan day name. The people, the ethnic group that's from Ghana.
Akan?
Akan.
That's A-K-A-N?
A-K-A-N. Yeah, it's an Akan day name. They come from the country of present-day Ghana. Sometimes you hear them referred to as the Ashanti.
I've heard of that.
Or one of these other groups, but the Ashanti is kind of like a subset of the general Akan. Cujo is a male day name for boys that are born on Mondays, right? I learned that, and I was like, wow, her last name was Cujo, but why is that her last name and not a first name? Well, I also started digging deeper into Grenada history. After slavery was abolished in Grenada, the enslaved people, they didn't take the last names of their former masters. What happened was, if a former slave male had a child, he would just give his child his first name as that child's last name, right? And so there's a lot of Akan day names floating around in Grenada and in Carriacou. Carriacou is actually the specific island that my grandfather comes from. It's an island off the coast of Grenada. That island specifically was a little bit different than a lot of other places that had colonial slavery. And the reason being, and I read about this in a book when I was in graduate school, and I was shocked to see my grandfather's tiny little Carriacou being referenced in a book about Africanism's transcending and outlasting slavery itself. And he described Carriacou as one of those special situations because there were two slave masters that owned the majority of the enslaved people in this island of Carriacou. And they had I guess you want to call it a liberal policy of allowing their enslaved people to determine their work week. Meaning the slave masters would say you have to do X amount of tasks during the week. If you can get those tasks done, you have the rest of the week free. So it incentivizes a slave to say, well, damn, I'm just going to work as fast as I could, get all the work done, and then instead of just having Sunday off, I have 3 or 4 days off, right? And that's the policy that these two slave masters that owned the majority of the enslaved people had in Carriacou. So they had 4 or 5 days off for themselves to do whatever they want, tend to their own gardens, practice their own religious ceremonies, continue to keep their African culture in Carriacou. So in Carriacou, they had a pretty rich African culture still to this day, and the people retain African names. I went to the cemetery in Carriacou. They got last names like Kwame, Kweshi, Kwaku, Kofi, Cujo.
Well, you name your son Kwaku?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I was like, that's when I started to get like,
Right,
hey,
right,
like I
right.
connected myself to this history, and I'm like, wow. So I started. Even when I went to graduate school after I learned this history, I said I wanted to major in West African
Right.
history, and so that.
But you listen to what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
And maybe you did say that at the beginning, your experience is different than mine.
Yeah.
So, if we talk about the diaspora,
Yeah.
you got those kind of stories from the diaspora.
Yeah.
American blacks are different.
Yeah.
We're different because we can't go back, because a lot of the records just were not kept.
Yeah.
And even if you kept the records, you weren't able to have 3 or 4 days off to do like what you just talked about doing with the American way of implementing the idea of slavery.
In Louisiana, you can find the records were kept very similar to where they were in the Caribbean.
And I got some friends from Louisiana. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. All right. I got you.
Yeah.
But Louisiana, that's because not only do you have the French,
Yep.
but you have the Spanish.
Yep.
Like all of that is
yeah.
part of that.
Yeah.
And the Spanish and the French did colonization differently than the English.
Yes. Yeah. The English had what was known as island mentality. The English, the way they did things, and this is one of the reasons why we have the whole the one drop rule here in America, because the way the English did things, it was like whenever they enslaved people, whenever they colonized people, they weren't in the business of turning the people that they enslaved or colonized into black versions of themselves. Their whole thing was, let's just exploit them for what we can, get the work out of them,
right.
But they're not us.
They're not us.
Because they're from an island. English people are like, ew, like they're
Right.
everybody else is other. But the Spanish, the French, and the Portuguese, they colonized and enslaved people differently. The Roman Empire conquered Spain, Portugal, France. The Roman Empire mixed people. It was a cosmopolitan mixed kind of empire.
Right.
So they were accustomed to seeing outsiders come into their place and mixing with people and all that kind of stuff. The English weren't. So when the French and the Spanish and the Portuguese colonized or enslaved people, they were not only were they trying to exploit them for their work and their labor and their bodies, but they're also trying to turn other people into black versions of themselves. Mm-hmm. So this is why certain Caribbean countries have an opportunity for like upward social mobility. Even if you're the blackest of the black, you can still, marry up or become better, or you can even become another race based on your status in certain Latin American countries. Right. You could be,
and that squares with a lot of my research as well.
Yeah.
You can switch categories.
Yeah, switch categories.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so the English are like, no, you're other. As soon as you have a drop of black blood in you, you're part of the rejected crowd. You're no longer one of us. We're here on our island doing our thing. You are something else. And this is why most places in America had that policy. Like you're colored, you're tainted, you're black, you're this. Louisiana is a little bit different, but most parts of America are what you're saying.
Are the same. And so to bring this back around to the idea about the psychology of being black, I like the fact that we both have two disparate experiences.
Yeah.
And I think that that's good for people to understand that when you say you're black, it's not a monolith.
Yeah.
It is something that constantly changes, not just changes in terms of what part of the world you're from as a darker skinned person, but it changes as you grow in your understanding of yourself and your understanding of your culture and the history of your culture in the specific place that you are in. Mm. And another thing I like about that Richard Powell book, that I'm basing a lot of my understanding of things on, is that he has this phrase in the introduction that talks about the black identity. Yeah. He says in there, being black is not a monolith. Yeah. but it's an infinite process of identity construction. Infinite process of identity construction.
That's why the names are always changing.
That's why the name changes, because the identity is constantly changing.
Yeah.
You know, the way I grew up, without understanding the stuff that I understand now, I'm a totally different person.
Yeah.
And there are people who are in my family who go, that is not the person that I raised. That is not who that is, because my identity has changed based on what I've learned.
Yeah.
And I'm a living witness. You're a living witness to what you just said.
Yeah.
How your personal identity is constantly constructed.
Yeah.
You get to decide what you want to take in and what you want to leave out. And I think that as a Black culture, as a Black people, I think that is one of the greatest things that we can claim about our culture. It is constantly changing.
Yeah.
And our culture drives American culture. Matter of fact, our culture drives world culture. There are people in Japan singing 50 Cent. Word for word, can't even speak English, but they're singing 50 Cent.
And they're putting in like locks in their hair.
Absolutely.
It up. And they got some type of like perming thing that makes their hair look like black afros and stuff like
Right.
that. Yeah.
So it's like, what is it Paul Mooney said? Everybody want to be black, but don't nobody want to be black.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah. And again, all of this is the complexity of the psychology of being Black. I mean, you got to, now we haven't even touched on Afrofuturism.
Yeah.
Because that's a whole nother area of understanding history, heritage, and Blackness.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Absolutely.
we haven't even touched on that. You know, we haven't even touched on the talented 10th idea from W.E.B. Du Bois. You know, juxtaposed with, you know, the community work from the Black Arts Movement in Chicago in the 60s.
Yeah.
I mean, all of this stuff is what it means to be Black. Especially here in America, but I would say also in the world.
In the world, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because they definitely had influence. When you talk about W.B. Du Bois, I mean, he was a Pan-Africanist.
Yeah.
Right. He definitely connected himself with the diaspora in many ways, and that's something that, you know, studying African diaspora history. I mean, one of the reasons why I even studied it in the first place is precisely because of my background, my history. It's like my mom's from here, my dad's from here. I grew up over there, right?
Right.
So I'm a part of this, and to see Black Americans like Du Bois connecting himself with the diaspora, because I've always kind of viewed myself in a more broad sense than I think most Black Americans that I grew up with did. When Black Americans would find out that I don't eat soul food, they would say, "Oh, you ain't Black," and I'd be like, "Well, what do you mean?" You know.
Right. well, that's another part of being a psychology, being Black.
Yeah.
Because you're told you're not Black.
Yeah.
Like white people who like listen to rap music and eat soul food, white people don't look at them and say, "You're not white."
Yeah, they get
they think, "Wow, you know, you're cool," you know, or whatever. I think what Powell calls it is racial quintessence. Like, we have to deal with the idea that there is something that has been culturally, you know, put in us that this is authentically what you are. And if you're not that, then you're not that. That's racial quintessence. Like, you know, you ain't Black if you don't eat soul food.
Yeah.
You're not Black if you speak, you know, correct or standard English. I ain't gonna say correct. We speak standard English.
Yeah,
right.
And like the food that I grew up eating was more akin to the Puerto Rican friends that I had than it was with the Black American friends. But, you know, I'm supposed to be, like, what am I? You know, so race was always a very kind of like complicated, convoluted thing for me.
Right. But even with what you just said, the psychology of saying, yeah, but it was more akin to Puerto Rican. You wouldn't have a Puerto Rico if it weren't for the transatlantic slave trade.
Exactly.
So your cuisine is a black cuisine.
Exactly.
It may not be Black American cuisine.
It may not be Black American, but it's a black cuisine.
And so now we can pick this up at another time, because this is going to open up a whole can of worms. When it comes to Black Americans often think that America was a large part of slavery. American slavery was only 17%. From what I've read, it was a very small percentage of the entire slave trade. So why is it that Black Americans are like slavery, when you weren't even the bulk of it? Like the bulk of it was like South America and the Caribbean.
Yeah. And
you told me one time that it was even less than 17.
Yeah. If you're talking about Africans that were transported directly from the continent to America, it's only 5%.
Okay. And so the fact that we as Black Americans, like, slavery was like big, for me, that's like understanding yourself only as a minority, like what we talked about before. Like, you're a minority because you're thinking in an American context.
Yeah.
But when you think in a global context, you are a majority.
You are,
And if you think that way, that has a propensity to change the psychology of how you reconstruct your identity. And if you understand that you are an infinite process of identity construction, then you can do whatever you want to do. I think we should end right there, man. Let's pick this up next time.